The Haunted Castle. The castle stood at the edge of a desolate hill, shrouded in mist and legend. Known as Blackthorn Keep, it was said to be the most cursed place in all of Europe. No one lived there anymore, and few dared to even approach it. Stories of the castle's haunted history were passed down from generation to generation, each tale darker than the last. The origins of its infamy traced back to the 16th century, when Lord Edric Blackthorn ruled the castle with an iron fist. He was a man of unparalleled cruelty, known for his endless greed and his insatiable thirst for power. But it wasn't just Edric's tyranny that made the castle infamous, it was the disappearance of its residents. Servants, guests, even entire families who sought refuge there had vanished without a trace. By the time the villagers gathered the courage to confront Edric, the castle was abandoned. He and his family had vanished, leaving behind an eerie silence that seemed to echo through the halls. Rumors swirled that the Blackthorn family had been cursed, their souls doomed to haunt the castle for eternity. Centuries passed and the castle fell into disrepair. Nature crept in, with ivy choking its walls and bats nesting in its turrets. But despite its decay, the castle remained an object of morbid fascination. Adventurers and ghost hunters came and went, but none stayed long. Some fled in terror, others simply never returned. It was into this foreboding place that I ventured, driven not by courage but by desperation. I was a historian by trade, struggling to make a name for myself in an unforgiving academic world. Blackthorn Keep was my chance, a treasure trove of history waiting to be uncovered. If I could document its mysteries, I could finally achieve the recognition I craved. The journey to the castle was arduous, the twisting path through the woods seeming almost alive, as though it shifted to confuse intruders. By the time I reached the gates, the sun was dipping below the horizon, casting the castle in an ominous glow. The air was heavy as I pushed open the rusted gates and stepped into the courtyard. It was eerily quiet, save for the occasional rustle of leaves in the wind. The castle loomed before me, its dark windows like empty eyes watching my every move. Inside, the air was colder, carrying the faint scent of mildew and decay. My footsteps echoed in the grand hall, which was dominated by a massive chandelier that hung precariously from the ceiling. The walls were lined with faded tapestries depicting scenes of opulence and violence, hunts, feasts, and battles. I set up camp in what appeared to be the dining hall. The table was long enough to seat dozens, though it was covered in dust and cobwebs. I unpacked my supplies, lit a few candles, and began exploring. The castle was a labyrinth of corridors and staircases, each leading to rooms filled with relics of the past. In the library, I found books so old their pages crumbled at my touch. In the armory, rusted swords and shields lay abandoned. But it was the portraits that unsettled me the most. Lining the walls of nearly every room were paintings of the Blackthorn family. Their faces were stern, their eyes piercing as though they could see straight into my soul. One portrait, larger than the rest, depicted Lord Edric himself. His expression was cold, his eyes dark and unyielding. As night fell, the castle began to change. It started with the sounds, faint whispers that seemed to come from the walls themselves. At first, I dismissed them as the wind or my imagination. But they grew louder, more distinct. They were voices, speaking in hushed tones, their words unintelligible yet filled with malice. Then came the shadows. They moved where no light could cast them, darting across the walls and floors like living things. I caught glimpses of figures in the corners of my vision, women in tattered gowns, children with hollow eyes, men in blood-stained armor. But whenever I turned to face them, they were gone. Sleep was impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, the nightmares began. I dreamt of the Blackthorn family, their faces twisted in agony as they screamed for help. I saw flashes of torture chambers, bodies hanging from chains, and rivers of blood flowing through the castle's halls. I woke drenched in sweat, the whispers now a cacophony of voices. They were no longer confined to the walls, they filled the room surrounding me, closing in. "You should not have come," they hissed. In my panic, I fled the dining hall, my candle flickering as I stumbled through the dark corridors. The castle seemed to shift around me, its layout no longer matching what I had explored earlier. Doors led to nowhere, staircases ended in sheer drops, and hallways twisted back on themselves. I found myself in the throne room, where Lord Edric's grand chair sat atop a dais. The room was suffused with an oppressive energy, the air thick with dread. As I approached the throne, the whispers fell silent, replaced by a low, guttural growl. And then I saw him. Lord Edric Blackthorn stood before me, his spectral form glowing faintly in the darkness. His eyes burned with an unnatural light, and his mouth twisted into a cruel smile. "You dare disturb my domain?" he said, his voice echoing like a thunderclap. I tried to speak, to explain, but no words came. "You are not the first to seek the secrets of Blackthorn Keep," he continued, stepping closer. "But you will share their fate." As he raised his hand, the shadows in the room coalesced into figures, his family and servants, their ghostly forms twisted by centuries of torment. They advanced on me, their hollow eyes filled with rage and despair. I turned to run, but the doors slammed shut, trapping me inside. The figures closed in, their hands reaching for me, their touch freezing and suffocating. I don't remember how I escaped. The next thing I knew, I was outside the castle, stumbling down the hill as dawn broke. My belongings were gone, left behind in my frantic flight. I returned to the village, shaken and broken. The locals avoided me, their faces a mix of pity and fear. I tried to tell my story, but no one believed me. The castle still stands, a dark silhouette against the sky, its secrets untouched. I know better than to go back, but I can still hear the whispers in my dreams, calling me, beckoning me to return. And I fear that one day I might not be able to resist.